Hello everyone and welcome back to Superboy Beyond, and we are returning to our comic book reviews this week. It's been a few months since we did issue 6, which I remember we really enjoyed issue 6. I don't remember it being one of my favourites, but it was a good one. So yeah, now we're here with issue 7, which the title on the front cover is Guilty, but the actual story name is Murmurs of the Heart. Yes, and there we are, our copies of the comic.
And this the ones that I got for you, Tom?
Issue 7. I'm not sure. You may have started from issue 8.
Okay.
Yeah, hard to remember that there's 22 of them plus a special.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know, but anyway, Murmurs of the Heart. This one's written by Mark Waid, who famously wrote Superman Birthright, which is not my favourite origin story of the character, to be honest with you. We're not going to get into Birthright in this episode.
Yep.
But it's got pencils by Jim Mooney and inks by Ty Templeton. And should we just get straight into this issue?
Absolutely.
So, at the start, we see this girl walking through the campus of Schuster, and we see her name is Valerie Frank, and she's hearing all these mean comments. She's kind of a loner. Nobody really knows anything about her. And because of that, rumors are just starting to go around about all these strange things about her.
I will say this, the way Jim Mooney draws her in a few panels, he sort of makes her slightly unattractive.
Slightly. But it's subtle. He could have made her just full on unattractive entirely, but she's just kind of plain.
The way he draws her, and the fact that her last name is Frank, it does lead us to believe that she is Jewish, because of the shape of the nose.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was intentional or not, but yeah, the nose thing's kind of strange. So I guess maybe. But yeah, she's walking through campus, and she is hearing all these mean comments that people are making about her. And to be honest, I do kind of feel for her. I think it is. I mean, they're college students, for Christ's sake. Why are all these students gossiping like high schoolers? Just a little bit strange for me. But then we see when she gets back to her bedroom, it's just full of Superboy stuff.
But if you notice one thing, the bottom panel of the first page, the only one out of anybody who's on campus
who's nice,
is Clark.
It's Clark. Of course it is.
Even Lana is being a bit of a snot.
Yeah, it's got to be that thing of what do they call it? It's not. I don't think it's herd mentality or anything, but it's just if a lot of people are being mean to one person, even some that wouldn't be mean ordinarily might find themselves doing it. It's almost just a group mental thing. I don't know what it's actually called. Maybe someone in the comments can tell us.
Yep.
But it's a bit out of character for Lana to be a little bit mean. But yeah, I'm just going to chalk it up to that. Maybe it's a combination of peer pressure and we get to her bedroom, and it's absolutely full of Superboy stuff. She's got a life-size cutout of him, I believe, and a bust on a desk. And I've made sure to note in my thing, I know that this is meant to be weird, almost stalkerish behavior in terms of this plot, because obviously I know where it's going. But I mean, it's no different to me than if a college student had a bunch of posters and stuff dedicated to their favorite pop star or something.
Right.
And I can't talk. I'm in a room surrounded by Superman stuff too. The only difference is he doesn't actually exist.
Right.
That's the only thing that I think makes it a little bit strange, is the fact that he actually exists. But people do it with rock stars. They do it with their favorite sports players. It's not that unusual, so I'm gonna let that go. But she starts writing in her diary, and she mentions she hopes to win Superboy's heart at the science fair. And good luck with that.
The way she starts off with writing in the journal is, she says June 21st. They think I don't hear their comments. They think I'm too strange. They all hate me. And part of it is, part of what she says is absolutely 100% true. They do think she's strange. But
they do. I don't know that they hate her, though. I think they just don't know anything about her. And it seems to be an ongoing thing in this issue, and we will touch on this again. But it's almost like she's not putting in the effort to actually connect with people, and then she's getting annoyed because they don't know anything about her.
Right.
It's basically what she loses it at Superboy for, really. Kind of ignoring her, but like she thinks she's in love with him, clearly, even right from the very start when you see her bedroom. She thinks she's in love with him, but she doesn't know him. She's in love with the idea of him. And I think it's quite strong characterization with the way she's writing on the desk. At the moment, she's basically, she's a little bit odd. Maybe she's a little bit too obsessed with Superboy, but at the same time, she's harmless, at least for now. Which is why, for the moment, I just feel bad for her, Anyway,
we've all known somebody exactly like this. Heck, to a certain extent, you and I have both been this person.
Yeah, I mean, we're obsessed with this show in the same way. I mean, I don't think we would ever cross over into stalkerish crazy territory, but you never know.
I don't know about you.
Huh?
I certainly wouldn't. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that she thinks she's in love with him and that she thinks she's been slighted, but we will get to that. He's not even done anything to her yet. She's still in love with him. She's still in love with him at the moment, so we're really getting ahead. But we get to the science fair and Clark is going around, and there's a really nice moment here where like Mark Waid's writing demonstrates Clark's intellect when he helps one of the students basically fix their broken invention, which is he uses his X-ray vision to look inside and see where the wiring's messed up and fixes it. Yeah. So obviously he's using his superpower to help him there, but he's also it's demonstrating that he's not like stupidly smart. It's not the super intellect power, but he's realistically intelligent, like given his abilities. Like he has a few advantages, and those have made him maybe slightly smarter than most.
Yep.
But he's not like Lex Luthor levels of intelligent. Maybe with emotional intelligence, but certainly just proper intellect. Lex definitely has it over Superman.
Yep.
But it also, this helps us that, it shows the audience why Superboy is even judging the exhibits at this science fair, because it doesn't make that much sense. He's not known for his scientific acumen, but it shows he's smart, and plus he works with Peterson all the time, so it makes sense.
And he is a regular fixture on Schuster.
Which is like, I don't know if it was ever said that explicitly in the show, but in this, like, it's very much said that Schuster is primarily a science college. Like, that seems to be one of their main focuses, like their speciality at that college. I guess, like, how some places focus on the law or medical or whatever. But he helps this student fix his invention, which is great. And it does lead to a nice little joke where as Clark's walking away, the guy he's just helped calls out, "Hey, Kent, like, listen, my VCR's on the fritz. Like, what do you think you could do with Kent? Now, where'd he get off to so fast?" As Superboy descends from the ceiling. Through a window, apparently. I like that little exchange when he fixes the invention. It does demonstrate his intellect, but at the same time, it sets us up for what I think is quite a funny little joke. And, the moment would have been funny enough anyway. You didn't necessarily need the joke, because I think someone not noticing that Clark has slipped away and then Superman appears is kind of a funny running gag in Superman just in general anyway. But yeah, I like that they put a little bit of an extra something in that moment.
And the fact that Superboy is showing up as the science fair judge, even though he is not known for his scientific acumen, even though he does work with Peterson a lot, you can kind of look at him being part of the science fair as the judge as perfect casting, we'll say, because he's impartial. He doesn't really have that much scientific acumen, as you've said,
which I think is actually something that leads to Superboy's biggest mistake on this next page, but we'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, I think you're right. It does kind of make sense for him to be there. He's always around the college anyway. He is impartial. Yeah, I don't know necessarily if he's the best judge of what's the most scientifically impressive thing. He kind of, like, on this page now, like he sees Valerie's invention and she's explaining how, like, her machine uses advanced supersonics for a variety of applications, including medically treating her own heart murmur. Yeah. And the fact is, pretty frigging great invention. Like, it should have received more attention from Superboy, because, like, if it works, like, that could help a lot of people. The only reason Superboy is distracted now is because he sees another student named Rusty Wells, who, by the way, great name, but he sees this student's invention, which is this hologram machine. And yeah, Rusty Wells' hologram thing is just a bit more flashy. It's a bit more attention grabbing. It looks cooler. And I think this is where Superboy made a mistake here, because yeah, holograms are cool. And let's face it, in 1989, the fact that this guy can create a photorealistic holographic double of Superboy is kind of amazing. Like, even, it would change everything at that point in time. Even the technology used to create the 3D CGI Superboy for the holographic thing to project, like, even that software would be revolutionary at that point. So yeah, it's still impressive, but I don't know, Superboy being the hero that he is, maybe he should have paid a little bit more attention to something that could potentially save lives one day. What do you think about that?
I definitely agree with you on that. He being that he is the lay person that he is, he went for what was flashier. Now, one could say that going by the flashier thing, that would get more money into the college.
It would.
Because think about it.
But then so would a revolutionary medical device. It could
Right,
be known as the college that helped fix heart murmurs for good or something. It's just like, now everybody they need a little device and it's sorted.
Yeah.
Either way,
But if you look at it, and this is going by real world examples, what brings the money into the colleges? It's not the things that save lives. It's the things that get the most attention.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
For example, Texas A&M University here in the United States, they have an immense science program, and they're constantly doing videos, which I've watched them. And if you ever watch the ones that have Dr. Tatiana in them, they're amazing. But they're very flashy. They get the most attention, but they're still scientific. So the same thing could be said here. You do the things that bring the attention, that brings more money in, and then you can do the things that save more lives later. So maybe Clark making this mistake is what's going to bring the most money into Schuster.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's the right choice, but maybe just kind of for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
In this case, Clark wasn't thinking about that stuff when he decided this person should win. But Yeah, I mean, I kind of see where you're coming from, because potentially, like, she does, like, Valerie does mention when she's like talking about her invention that maybe with a grant she'd be able to like take it a step further and do more and more to help people. So maybe by having Rusty Wells's hologram thing win, maybe the school gets more money. Maybe she can actually get that grant, but maybe she wouldn't necessarily get it if she had one. Which would have been kind of a strange thing, but sometimes that's just how things go, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, Rusty Wells' invention, he's got 2 Superboys for the price of 1. You see, they can't touch anything, but the whole crowd seems just enthused by it. And I mean, it appears it's photorealistic, so impressive as hell. I would probably be distracted by it too. But, yeah,
and remember, these are not holograms like what we would see in the holodeck on Star Trek: The Next Generation. These are,
they're just light. Yeah, you pass light. Straight through them. They're more like the Red Dwarf type of hologram than Star Trek.
They're not solid. They're not solid 3-dimensional, images. They're just images that are projected.
Yeah. I'm just editing the video and something just occurred to me. We're talking a lot about how the holograms can't actually touch anything, but in Rusty Wells's first panel, when you see his booth, he's literally got a sign saying, "Shake hands with Superboy." How? Which is, maybe if he his technology is able to progress, maybe if that guy gets starts his own company, maybe in a few years he'll figure out how to make them be able to touch, but we'll see. But it does, they are setting up something though. By showing that the holograms are intangible, they are setting something up which helps us towards the end of the story. So we'll touch back on that in a few moments. But Valerie is upset, a little bit inconsolable, mostly because she feels slighted by all of this, and maybe Superboy should have at least listened and let her finish talking about her exhibit before wandering off. Like, that was a little bit rude. But Valerie's walking back through and she hears a noise. She sees that Superboy is in a room, and she thinks he's alone. But when she opens the door, she sees that actually he was with Lana. And I guess this was the final straw. She goes back to her room. She destroys all her Superboy memorabilia. Even, I assume it's like an actual plaster cast of his head. It's like an actual bust of his head. I don't know where she would have bought one of these things. Like, maybe Andy's selling them.
That was what I was thinking, because we've talked about before how sometimes Andy has some really good ideas. All of these items seem to have Andy's signature all over them.
Yeah. Even the fact that this bust of his head broke so easily probably suggests that it's maybe an Andy McAllister product. Yep. He wouldn't worry about it being particularly, strong. But it's got to be Andy, or there's got to be another person that's causing all of this. Well, Chris is frozen on my screen, by the way. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You sort of sound like a robot. Oh, you're moving again, but very pixelated. Yeah, I my headcanon, those are Andy McAllister products. Not just because there's so many of them and because he's got a history of that, but also because the quality appears to be slightly shoddy.
Yeah, but also you got to remember something. When something happens that's really big, everybody jumps on the same bandwagon. And especially if it's something like Superboy, who in this world nobody's got exclusive rights to. I mean,
there's probably multiple people making Superboy licensed products. They could probably get sued at some point, but I mean, I don't see how Superboy can even begin a lawsuit with them without revealing his identity. Like, it's not like he can claim that they've not paid him royalties, because it's like that thing with Spider-Man. He can't sell merchandise without revealing that he's Peter Parker, so he's got to just stay poor. It's one of those funny little things with superheroes, because people always say, why aren't all superheroes rich? They should just start selling merch. But No. If they have secret identities, they can't do that. Maybe Tony Stark could, because everybody knows who he is anyway.
Yep.
But although I suppose that's more of an MCU thing, I think he still did have a secret identity in the comics. I don't know. I've never been a huge Marvel Comics fan, to be honest. Anyway, so yeah, we cut to what is apparently the newly refurbished Schuster Tower. So yeah, they're having a little bit of a party there. They go to ring the bell, even though one of them says that the bells haven't worked in years. But then they do start ringing very, very loud, and you realise it's because the entire tower is being vibrated with supersonic sound waves, I guess. Which gives me a little bit of a flashback to that episode of Lois and Clark with the guy that was also in Superboy. I forget what his name is, the actor.
Michael Daybar.
That's it. You know, his wall of sound. That's immediately what I thought of when I was reading this issue. But yeah, someone's like going to fall out the tower, and these sound waves, like Valerie's invention, is working brilliantly, and not on purpose, but it's working brilliantly to actually disable Superboy because it's using his super hearing against him. And it's interesting. I will come back to the point a bit later. He loses control and people are immediately like, oh, thanks for nothing, Superboy. And it's like, nice work. Like, people start calling him a jerk, and he tries to explain. He's like, wait, like, you don't understand? Like, didn't you hear that siren? But I guess nobody else did. But it's setting up, I guess, that people are starting to not trust Superboy, even though I think it's happening bloody quick. I will touch on this again later, because I do think it gets a little bit ridiculous at a certain point. But we then cut back to the science lab, and we have Peterson and Dr. Knox discussing the fact that Superboy has been acting erratically, and I don't see that it was erratic, really. It's been one incident. It's pretty... I would have thought it would have been pretty obvious that he was being disabled, plus the fact that he said before leaving, didn't anybody hear that siren? You'd have to assume something else was going on. I don't know why people are immediately jumping to the worst conclusions.
Well, remember, you know, it's like the line from Men in Black says, you know, a person is smart. A person understands things. People are idiots.
Yeah.
You know, it's the mob mentality, you know, and
I just think it's happening bloody quick. You know, this is during his second year of superheroics. Like, it's not like it's a red kryptonite situation, because if that was the case, he would have been there destroying the building himself. He wouldn't have. He wouldn't have even shown up to stop the villain, because why would he care? You know. So it's clearly not that. Like, so I guess you're right. Like, a person might be able to work that out, but if everybody's panicking a little bit, yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think you're right there. But as Knox and Peterson are there, they're talking about how Superboy is going to be flying their ultra laser to the Pentagon. But Knox isn't sure that they can trust Superboy with it now. Obviously, Peterson, thankfully, is just immediately like, no, that's ridiculous. Like,
Peterson,
of course, we can trust him.
As always, he's the one ray of hope. You know, Peterson is not one of these people who is going to turn against him unless he absolutely has reason. I mean, it's you know, it's like the whole thing with Emil Hamilton in the Justice League animated series, you know, and Superman the animated series. You know, Hamilton didn't turn against him until, you know, he nearly killed him, you know, during the whole Darkseid invasion. You know,
he's his scientific confidant. And Superman is funny. Like, I'm glad that we had a version of, like, let's face it, Peterson is basically just Superboy's version of Hamilton. They just changed the name. He fulfills the same purpose as a character. You know, he's Hamilton in everything but the name. But I'm glad that they at least had a character like that, you know, because I do think that some of the most fun Superman stories come from stories that somehow involve maybe Star Labs, or, you know, when you have Hamilton and stuff. It's funny, like, Smallville, I believe, had 2 Dr. Hamiltons. Like, they had one in, like, the first season who wasn't Emil Hamilton, And he had like this. He was a meteor freak with super shaking hands or something.
Yeah, and he was played by Joe Morton.
I'm glad that Superboy as a show had a character like this, because I do think it opens up the potential for so many great stories, as it always has done in the comics, animated shows. But yeah, let's move back on. We do see, while Peterson and Knox are talking, that Valerie is in there and she's got her supersonic sound device. I'm just going to keep calling it her device from now on, because I don't think it ever got given a proper name, and it's quite a long thing. But she then uses this device to essentially knock out both the scientists, and she drags them into a vacuum chamber of some kind. And there's no air in there. So thanks to an anonymous tip, Lana runs into Clark's dorm room and tells him what's going on, that they're running out of air and the fire department aren't going to make it on time. And so Superboy goes to help, and he starts using his super hearing to decipher the key code combination. But then he realizes that his super hearing has stopped working, and not just that, like, he can't hear anything now. He's completely deaf, which I've got to say, it was actually set up when Valerie was talking about her invention at the science fair. She does say that it can be used for noise cancellation as well. So I like the fact that it was set up back then, but it's a detail that, because she's probably the least interesting thing on that page, you might forget that detail. But I like that it's there. Superboy's hearing all this stuff. His hearing's gone funny. He can't understand anybody, and I guess to their perspective, he's just sort of freaking out a little bit. I don't know why he's not just speaking and say, "I've gone deaf. I can't hear it. Hello," just something so the people will actually know something's going on.
Maybe the way the sound waves are affecting him. I know certain people who lose the ability to hear also lose the ability to speak. So maybe it could be affecting not just his eardrum, but also his vocal cords. Maybe it's seizing vocal cords up.
I mean, you could still point to your ears and be like, something to let them know, like, I've gone deaf, But he just kind of stands there shaking for a while, and people just again are just like, he didn't do anything, like, we can't trust him and all of this. And
it's like they this is one of the parts that Mark Waid didn't really flesh out. I mean, I know that if Alan Moore had written this book, that part would have definitely been fleshed out, what was going on.
I mean, to me, that's the most interesting part of this story so far, and it's a shame because it's the part that's been touched on the least. If done right, this could be great. I think maybe part of it is that you've only got a certain number of pages, but I don't see why they couldn't just make this a two-parter, especially in the comics. You'd think they would welcome the opportunity to have one less issue to think about. But Valerie goes back to her room. She's making note of the fact that her tech, her device, has had the unforeseen but very welcome side effect of essentially knocking out Superboy's powers and disorientating him to the point where he can't help anyone. She's trying to destroy Superboy's reputation, but at first, I don't think that was necessarily the whole thing, because I don't see how, if she didn't know early on that this was going to affect his powers, what was she doing? It only makes sense if it's an attack on Superboy, because why destroy the tower?
Right. Well,
if she didn't know at that point that it would affect him, I mean, maybe you could argue she wants to test and see if it would.
Yeah, but I think the first instance with the tower was a test. Okay, obviously she realized, okay, I can mess up his equilibrium and I can make it so that he can't help people. Maybe she was trying to do the same thing here, and now she realizes, oh, I canceled out his hearing.
Hmm.
Most people seem to forget that Superboy or Superman, depending upon what we're talking about, he can't shut off his super hearing. Lex pointed it out in the two-parter threesome. He says, I figured, what would happen if I did this? And then I realized, what if he can't shut it off? Sherman Howard did the delivery on that better.
Sherman Howard, you can't get much better than him for this type of Lex Luthor character. He's very much in Silver Age, and he delivered all of those lines magnificently. That's the only thing that I think the tie-in comics don't have over the TV show, because let's face it, in comic books you can go absolutely crazy. Like, budget is not an issue because you can draw anything, but because you don't actually have the actors delivering the lines, you've got to rely on your own inner monologue reading those lines out for it to be good. And I can kind of hear Sherman Howard's voice when last time we was doing a review in this with the Lex Luthor story, I was trying my best when I was reading it to read it in Sherman Howard's voice in my head.
Right.
I can't do it. He's such a better actor than I am that I can't even approximate it in my own head, let alone vocalize it. But getting off topic now, but there we go. But yeah, so she's worked out that she's found a weakness that she can exploit. She's going to destroy his reputation, and she does make note of the fact that the Rusty Wells's prize-winning toy, as she refers to it, is going to play a pivotal role. And now, obviously, because I hadn't read this issue before, when I was reading this part, I was thinking, oh, maybe she's going to make a hologram of Superboy and a hologram of her, and that's how she'll do it. Like, maybe she'll frame Superboy for something, because I remember the cover. Maybe she'll frame Superboy by just, fixing some CCTV or something. Because when they look at the recording, they would just see Superboy killing someone.
Right.
So, my head, I was going in 1,000 different directions. But yeah, we get to the next page, and this is just kind of lunacy. And actually, before we get on to the next page, I do want to say that one of my biggest problems with how quickly the public is distrusting Superboy comes from this, where she literally just says, like, no one trusts him anymore other than a few holdouts. No. I would imagine, like, the holdouts, the people that still trust him, would be the majority. I don't see how two incidents where all Superboy did was act a bit disoriented for a few seconds. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't try and kill anyone or anything. He didn't cause the destruction. He just kind of looked like he was getting dizzy for a minute. So I don't buy it. That's my biggest problem with this issue, is I just don't buy it.
Yeah, and the fact that it's a lot like some of the episodes of the series, where if it would have been done as a two-parter and we could have fleshed things out a little bit better, it would have worked. There was one other way that this could have all been worked out a little bit better. Okay,
I have an idea as well, but say yours and then I'll say mine.
If this was done in flashback, okay,
so it was an early story, like you could have had it set during the first few weeks of season 1 or something. Maybe.
No. I'm saying that the whole story starts during the trial that we're going to have, okay, and it's told through flashback as people are on the stand.
That could work. Yeah.
And then you don't really have to have all that expository stuff.
I mean, any exposition that you need to do could just be worked into like testimony, so it would even feel organic for the story. That could potentially make it a lot better. I think if there was a little bit more time in the issue, what I would have done is it's been shown now that certain sound frequencies can actually cause hallucinations. And in a lot of old buildings, this has actually now been proven to be the reason so many old buildings supposedly that have ghosts and shit, like the hauntings and stuff. It's like the old style piping and stuff. It's vibrating at a frequency, making a sound, and it's provable. It causes hallucinations in humans. With this device of hers, she could potentially give Superboy hallucinations, make him really freak out, think he's fighting someone, and actually have him causing property damage. Like that could have been a fun third thing. Like if you just still have the first two, but then have a third thing where it's that, I could believe it then, maybe.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe Mark Waid had that written into the script, but they said, we got to trim some of this stuff out because
maybe
too much.
Yeah. It might also explain why so much of the story is told through Valerie's diary. Like there's an awful lot of exposition that's told that way. It's almost like parts of this comic aren't even told like a comic book. It's almost like you're reading a novel because you're reading her diary. And it's funny, actually. It's got to be purposeful that they gave her the surname Frank and she's writing a diary throughout the entire thing. That's got to be on purpose.
That's why I pointed out what I pointed out at the beginning, that she's drawn to look a little Jewish, with the nose.
Yeah, and she's hiding, and she's hiding from the world, and she thinks the whole world is out to get her, I guess.
And look at the hairstyle that they've got on her.
As we move on, she's on the stage now giving this batshit insane speech about how, she and Superboy were lovers, and all of this weirdness that's been going on has been, she calls these accidents or whatever to try and get back at Superboy, and now that he's dumped her, he's coming back to kill her, which is kind of strange. And I don't like the fact that Superboy carrying this laser flies directly over the stage. He's supposed to be going straight to the Pentagon. So why is he there?
Well, who knows? Maybe that was his maybe that was his route, towards the Pentagon.
It's just a bit too convenient for me. Also, there's a line later on where he mentions that he can hear a pin drop from clear across town. Yet later on, when he's talking to Lana in the prison cell, he's saying that at this point, just before the laser activated, he only just could hear what she was saying. So even his powers aren't too consistent in this scene.
Well,
I don't know. It's just it's not a scene I love, to be honest. But
I would chalk it up to the fact that she was using the
maybe she could have been like using something just to almost put a cocoon of soundproofing around where she was. Maybe, I don't know. They didn't say that, so I'm just going to assume that it's just an inconsistency in his powers. But so he's flying over. She's obviously, we saw earlier on when she broke into the lab, she's rewired the laser so she can set it off remotely, so that she can make it look like Superboy's just killed her. And it's a funny laser that it shoots you and then you explode. I would have thought a laser would just sort of cut you in half. Really? Unless she'd been eating dynamite for the last few days.
But you got to remember, she was also using Rusty Wells's device.
I know, but I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know how it tricked people. Like, I know that I know that she's not dead. I know the explosion was faked, but I don't know how anybody was fooled that a laser made her explode. It just doesn't make sense to me. But that doesn't matter. Superboy's framed for this crime, and I've got to admit, despite the fact that I can poke that hole in it quite easily, it still looks pretty damn incriminating, and you can kind of see why the police would immediately arrest him for it. But it's just kind of a weird one. And you already have people now saying like they immediately believe her because of this, and they're all chanting murderer, murderer. And fair enough, I guess. They think they've just watched him literally murder someone, so it makes sense. I'm not overly keen on that scene, I'll be honest with you. But the next scene I like a lot. We cut to the prison cell. Lana shows up, and it takes him no time at all to convince her of his innocence. Like, Lana obviously trusts him implicitly, and yeah, it's literally it's halfway through this one page where they're talking in the prison cell, and she believes him. They've already confirming that, Valerie Frank, and like she had like when he was flying overhead, he was listening to her, like hearing what she was saying, and then the laser fired spontaneously, and then this fireball, she exploded. And obviously he works out that she was standing on wooden scaffolding, and a real explosion would have left like I'm going to quote this exactly as well, would have left marks, ashes, something. There was no marks whatsoever on that stage. It was like she exploded and just kind of vaporized into nothingness. Nothing left behind.
Yep.
Which again, very strange. I don't know how hyper this hyper laser of theirs is. But yeah, a little bit strange. But still, I guess it does leave the opportunity for Superboy to work out what's happened this quickly, because I'm glad that they didn't have him actually think that he indirectly caused her death. Like, he figures out from here that she's probably out there somewhere. And since he can't leave prison, he sends Lana to investigate, which is... it's interesting that you've got Lana doing the investigating in this issue, because I like when Lana actually has something to do that's important to the plot. It doesn't matter even that she failed in her search. I like the fact that she was given something to do.
Yeah. The only problem that I have with this page is, when Lana says, but the police found wall-to-wall Superboy souvenirs in her room. And those things she said about you and her being, well, close. Did you even know her? And he says, not at all. And I think that was my real mistake.
I don't see that as his mistake necessarily.
How is that a mistake?
All I can say is, because later in this issue, when he's on the stand and he gives his closing statement type thing, he says that he should have recognized that she needed help. He should have recognized how lonely she was. And he just kind of ignored her. Maybe that's all he's referring to. His mistake was in not seeing that someone needed his help desperately, and he ignored them. I'm going to choose to look at it that way.
Technically, he did realize it because he said it as Clark. That,
Yeah, but then as Superboy, he kind of just ignored her twice. Like, first at the science fair when he noticed the holograms, but then it was obvious that she really wanted to say something to him. She just... she was trying to get his attention, trying to say, like, I need to speak to you, and he just kind of flew off. And then Lana just wandered off as well. She didn't even say anything to her. So I'm guessing that's what that line is meant to mean. But at this point, when I was reading this through, because obviously I didn't have the context of the ending for this issue, I agreed. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see how that's really his mistake, unless what I'm saying for later on.
Yeah, but then again, as everybody puts it, Superman / Superboy has the weight of the world on his shoulders.
He can't see everything, and he can't see and hear everyone that needs his help at all times. He's gonna miss things. I know he's not human, but at the same time, he is human. Really.
Yeah, or worse, like in the Rebirth two-parter, that monologue he has with the Kents, where he says, there's a fire up in Canada. Oh, I can go and take care of that. But there's some oil workers on a rig over here, in the South Pacific. And I have to decide who to go save.
Yeah. There's an excellent episode of Smallville as well that touches on this. It's an episode where Clark gives Lois his powers for 24 hours in a kind of, I guess it's their take on All-Star Superman, but it's like she knows about his abilities and they're engaged or whatever, and he wants to show her what it's like to be him every day. And they're on the street and she's saying, like, there's something over there he could help with, there's something over here. Over
Lois and Clark.
No, this was definitely an episode of Smallville, this one.
Well, I remember them doing this on Lois and Clark. It was the episode where Lois becomes Ultra Woman. Because
they did it there as well.
because there was these two female scientists, one played by Shelley Long, who try to use a weapon made out of red kryptonite to turn him apathetic, but again, red kryptonite in Lois and Clark actually has the
random effects thing.
Yeah, and this time it transfers his powers from him to Lois, and now Clark is the unpowered and Lois is the powered.
Yeah. This one though, this was because in Smallville, it was because Jor-El didn't want them to get married until Lois understood the responsibility that Clark had on his shoulders. So it was Jor-El's doing to give her the powers so that she could understand before deciding whether they would get married. But there's a great line. Like Lois is like hearing, she's using her super hearing. She's like, there's something going on down there, and he's like, yeah, but don't worry. If you listen just a little bit further, there's a fire truck on the next block. It's about to turn the street. It will be arriving there about the same time that we would anyway. You can let them have this one. They've got this, and it's just a really nice thing where it shows that he's not just using his super hearing to hear for people in trouble. He's also hearing to figure out who's actually going to get help without him anyway. Like who's going to be okay, who's not going to be okay, so he knows who to prioritize at any given moment. And I thought that was a really intelligent bit of writing in that episode of Smallville. Like, you know, a lot of people say that Smallville kind of went off the rails a bit, but I really like the final few seasons. It stops being a Superman origin story and just kind of becomes an Elseworlds tale. But I'm fine with that because I think they still delivered some very good episodes and some phenomenal characterization. But yeah, we'll move on from there. Like Lana is going out to investigate and try and find Valerie Frank. As the trial's going on, we see it's going on for 3 days. Each day, like Lana holds up a note saying she's not found her yet. And on the next page, after we see Lana showing that she's not found her, there's a really great moment, and this is my favorite part from this issue, my favorite single panel, is that Clark's lawyer is talking about Superboy's good works, and he mentions that not all of his works are big universe-ending threats. Sometimes he does small things. And we have a flashback to the Fixer, and we see Superboy refereeing the basketball game, and I really like that. I like that we have a flashback there. It's a nice example to choose. You know, you could have easily just shown a shot of him rescuing a cat from a tree, but I like that they actually based it in a season 1 episode as well. Showing that, you know, even if Gerard's universe and John's universe are slightly different, even though I think they're intended to be the same, even though there are differences, inconsistencies rather, I should say. Yeah, at least we know that Gerard's Superboy had that storyline as well. But his lawyer is talking all about all the things that Superboy has done, all the good works, all the people he's saved, and Clark then decides, you know, because this other lawyer interjects and tries like saying, "No, your client is a murderer" and all this, and you know, his lawyer does object to it and it's sustained, but still, Clark obviously knows that he's not winning, so he starts giving his own closing statement. And as he's talking, and Lana has actually even said to him at one point in this, like, she's whispering because she knows he can hear her. And she says she was a loner. Everybody kept a distance from her. The only person that really knew Valerie Frank was her doctor, and even they haven't seen her in weeks. And as Clark is giving his closing statement, which I think is a really nice little speech, and I think it gets into a lot of some of the more human aspects of Clark as a person, especially being the last son of Krypton and all that. But Lana mentioned the doctor, which reminded Superboy about Valerie's heart murmur. And while he's giving this speech, he's used his super hearing, and we don't know as the reader that he's doing this immediately, but he does explain later. But he's using it to listen out for her heart murmur, and he sees that she's in the audience, like she's got a wig and glasses on as a disguise. But as he's talking, he literally just gets off the stand and just calmly walks over, sits down next to her, and removes her wig and glasses as she breaks down in tears, realizing what a huge
very
mistake she's
Scooby-Doo
made.
moment right there.
Yeah, but I like the fact that he's not angry. He's not trying. This issue isn't solved with a fight. There's no, well, I'm going to get my device, and now that you know I'm here, I'm going to blast a hole in the side of this courtroom or something. I don't know. They could have gone down that route and have her just become irredeemable. But no, she breaks down in tears. Clark takes her to go, off to prison. He does say that he's going to try to, do what he can to arrange that she gets the help she needs. But I thought it was really nice that during this speech, he talks about the fact that he should have recognized that someone desperately needed his help and he didn't. And that's his mistake, and he apologizes for it. And I think that, more than anything, is what gets through to her. But yeah, I thought the ending of this story was about as good as I could have hoped for it to be. And I think that the very last panel has just some really lovely writing where you hear Superboy say, "She really didn't hurt anyone. She just needs help, and I'll do what I can to arrange for it. Because with the ability to hear a pin drop across town or the rustle of a butterfly's wings, the saddest thing I've ever heard is the sound of a broken heart." And okay, it's a little bit flowery and overly poetic. You could argue it's even a tiny bit pretentious.
Yeah.
But I think it works for the kind of story this is, because at the end of the day, this was a story of heartbreak. So having sort of a poetry moment in the last panel of the thing, if you can do it anywhere, this is kind of a good place to do it, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is where the pin drop thing, and obviously earlier in the story when he couldn't hear her, even though he was literally flying like 5 meters away. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was on stage, shouting. So you should have been able to hear her from that distance, even without super hearing. But yeah, I'm just going to call that an inconsistency. Overall, I really did enjoy this issue, but it's not one of my favorites. This issue, more than any other, is complicated for me, because there are stuff in like moments in this that I love, but then there's a whole bunch of things, as we've touched on throughout this review, that I don't like so much. I think it could have been much better. I have very complicated feelings on this one. So it's
my whole thoughts on this is, it has its moments where it's absolutely great. Okay, but I think what lets it down is, and I know a lot of people are gonna jump all over me when I say this, Mark Waid. Okay,
I like Mark Waid.
As a writer, he is great when he's doing certain characters. Certain characters he just doesn't get, and one of them is...
I disagree. Birthright had a couple of things I disagreed with, but overall I felt like he understood most of it. I feel like he was 90% of the way there with Birthright. I think he understands about 90%, but I think you're right that there's a little bit of Mark Waid weirdness that he usually interjects with his characters, and maybe it doesn't always quite fit for Superman. But yeah, 90% of the time, I have no problem with how he's writing Superman at all throughout this entire issue. I think Superman's written brilliantly. I don't know if necessarily the story had it didn't have the time to breathe that it needed. It felt very rushed.
If this had been a story that he did during his run on The Flash, okay, this story would have worked a lot better. Because The Flash is one of those characters that he's got him down 100%. That 10% that he doesn't really get on Superman, or in this case Superboy, I think that's where the issue lacks.
Yeah. And it would even make more sense as a Flash story, because he gets in and out of places very quickly. He wouldn't notice necessarily that Valerie was there pining for him in the background.
Yeah.
Superman, you think of as a character, you think of him as the guy that is constantly looking for ways to help people, because it's not just because he feels a responsibility for it, it's because that's genuinely his favorite thing in the world to do. Superman loves help.
He is the world's best friend, as I think of him.
Yeah. So I would think, especially since this is in the second year of his time as Superboy, I would have hoped that he'd be looking out for things like this a little bit more. I guess he was just distracted first by some colourful holograms, and then he was distracted by Lana, because who wouldn't be distracted by Lana?
One thing you could kind of work with on that is most of the issue is told in Valerie's diary, so
it's very much a point of view story.
Yeah. What I really think would work, and I said it before, is if this was done as a flashback story to, maybe at the beginning of the story we see somebody just writing in a journal, and over the course of the issue, at the end, then we realize that it's been Valerie the whole time writing in her journal, and she's in a sanitarium or even a jail cell.
Yeah. Could be. I mean, even the whole thing, if you were to drop the whole diary aspect entirely, you could just use the court case as a framing device and literally just have, you could set up the entire story where the court case is all about just testimony about what happened on these specific days, what led up to the events, what they think the cause was, Superboy trying to give his side of the story. But then you could have conflicting accounts from witnesses where they say, no, this is what I saw. And it could be like you could see two people's perspectives on the same event. And that could help throw doubt on Superboy's innocence. Obviously, the audience would know that he's innocent, but it might have been an interesting way to approach this story. Kind of like, the Batman animated series episode with all the villains talking about the time they fought the Bat and almost
almost got him.
Yeah. Like, they all have their own, like, every time they talk about their perspectives, they come from a different point of view. And there was also a very similar story that was part of back when Batman Begins came out. Straight after that, they made an animated sequel called Gotham Knight.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed it. I thought I didn't enjoy every story in it because it was a bunch of short stories. But they had one that was very much like that. But it was a load of, I think, homeless kids in an abandoned railway station. And they were talking about just the times that they saw the Batman. And like one of them depicts him in their story as a supernatural giant actual bat creature. More like Man-Bat, I guess. And it's like one, and they think he's like this, I guess like a techie robot Batman. And it's like another one that's more like the real Batman. And yeah, maybe they could have done something like that where it's... because two people have a different point of view, and because human memory is so, what's the word? Unreliable, shall we say? Right. It's why eyewitness testimony is not loved as evidence in court proceedings, really, because human memories are dodgy.
Yeah, eyewitness testimony is only valued if it can be backed up with fact.
Yeah, just saying you saw something is basically meaningless, because even if you utterly believe that you're telling the truth, human memories have been proven. Our memories suck. And they, I remember seeing a documentary all about this thing where they were talking about why human memory is so fickle. And they literally said something along the lines of, you can basically the human memory remembers something once. And then after that, you're not remembering the original event. You remember the last time you remembered. And so each time you remember something, you're actually remembering a memory of a memory of a memory. And of course it gets, and it's a telephone game entirely within your own head, and it gets fucked up very quickly. So I don't know, I always found that really fascinating. And that could have been an interesting other way that they could have done this. Really, I think having Superboy in court for murder should have been the framing device for not just one issue, but at least a 2-part, maybe even a 3. Like, that's the sort of framing device that you could tell a really powerful Superman story in. I don't know. Most of the time when we review episodes of Superboy or any issues of the comics, most of the time, let's face it, we say this could have done with being a 2-parter. This is probably one of the few times where I would say I think this could have done with being a 3-part episode, because I think that if you were to rewrite it in the way that you suggested with the court case, you know, opening with that, and you could have the diary and like, all of these different things, and then you bring in my idea for using it as a framing device, I think that could be a really exceptional 3-part episode. It's just, So that's why my feelings on this issue are so complicated, because I love the potential of it, but I don't love the story. I would still give it a 6.5 out of 10, but I think even 6.5 is being generous. I couldn't go any higher.
Yeah, I would probably just give it a 6. No.
I'm going to give it 6.5 just because I like the ideas behind it. I think it deserves an extra 0.5 just for that. But I mean, we can always just split the difference. We'll call it 6.25.
Yeah. I mean, where I think it does well is, you know, Jim Mooney's art, you know, as usual.
Always great. Always great.
I mean, he was a legend. He'd been working since the 40s, you know.
I was going to say, like, the artwork looks classic, and Lana's hairstyle has the same issue in this that it did in the earlier one, where I said she sort of had a 1950s hairstyle, sort of like the Rockwell era type thing. But it's fine because he's been working that long. He's probably just drawing Lana the same way he drew her for decades.
Yeah.
But the artwork is phenomenal, and I love the way that even the courtroom is portrayed. Like, he uses some very strong shadows. Like, there's a great close-up of Superboy's face when he's talking, and it's just like some really dramatic shadows on his face.
Yep.
Little techniques
one thing I will note, I will mention, you know, and this is something that I noticed when I read it last night. I think we can figure out the reason why Valerie has short hair. Because of the ending, she's wearing a wig.
I mean, the ending, she's wearing a wig, but I mean, she's wearing didn't she have like short hair from the very start?
Right, but think about it this way. It's a lot easier to have short hair and put on a wig than it is to have long hair and then have to put it in a bun and then put the wig on. It looks a little... True, but then she's walking through campus without a wig. Like, if that's why she has her hair short, but I mean, if that's why she has the hair short, so she can put a wig on, it's just easier, it's less upkeep. Well, no, I'm just saying they're setting it up so that, you know, at the end when he pulls that wig off.
Maybe. I think it was just a simple and easy way to make her look a little bit plain, since I think that's what the artist was going for with the character. I think it's just, you know, when you have long hair on a girl, maybe he just felt like maybe she was looking a little bit too glamorous at times. Maybe it was just the decision was made. We'll keep her hair short. It'll make her look slightly more masculine. Yeah, and of course, I don't know. There could be any number of reasons. But
the one panel that has all the disembodied heads of the people in the courtroom, if you look right down at the bottom row,
yeah, she's there in the middle. Yeah,
you look at it and, you know, you're like, that's her in the wig.
Yeah, you can see that it's her face, and I think that's a testament to the artist. You know, let's face it, you put a different color hair on a girl and you put glasses on her, especially in comic books, which is quite a simplistic style of art, it would be quite difficult to recognize her. But somehow, just from the facial expression, she's got this really interesting facial expression on her. She's always got this sort of furrowed brow thing going on, where she's almost always scowling slightly, or at least that she's sad. And it's the same expression you've seen on her face throughout the entire comic up to this point. So you're right, you recognize her. And I mean, I did recognize her when I was reading it through for the first time. Obviously, by the next page, you literally have close-ups on her, so you know. But
yeah,
I think, it's a testament to the artwork. I think he did a very good job in that reveal. And I like the fact that we don't know that Superboy is using his super hearing to recognize her. Like, you don't even necessarily know on this page when he sits down next to her how he spotted her in the crowd. Because presumably she's been there for all 3 days of this trial. Because why would she only be there this one day? She must have been in the audience the whole time and he just never noticed. So it's it's one of those things that is kind of strange, because you have Lana saying that she's had no chance finding her. Like, there's no sign of her anywhere, and yet
she's been like she's like the old Edgar Allan Poe story of the purloined letter. She's hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, she's right there in front of them. Lana's all over town. She's looking for her everywhere. She even got in touch with her doctor and found out no, he's not even seen her. She's right there. And even before Superboy removed her wig, you can tell that it's her just from her facial expression, because literally you can go back several pages and just, it's the same look on her face that she had even on the very first page as she's walking through Schuster and, people are being mean to her.
Yep.
So yeah, I think while the writing I don't feel was its strongest for this series, this is probably the weakest issue so far. Yeah, I do think there's still quite a lot to love in this one. But unless you've got anything else to say on this one, I think that's it.
No, I think we've kind of gone over everything that we needed to go over. I mean, like you, I love the fact that they referenced the Fixer in that one flashback.
That was my favorite panel on this. I love when they actually reference past stories. There was a previous issue of the comic, didn't they? Reference Luthor Unleashed. They showed Luthor's origin, and they actually literally cut back to him losing his hair and all of this. It was slightly different to how it originally was, but yeah, I'll have to go back and check out that issue again and compare and just see which one I think referenced it better. But I like it. I like that they were actually referencing stuff from season 1 in the comics, because let's face it, they didn't do it on the show very often, so at least it was happening somewhere. But yeah, that's it. We'll call it a 6.25. We'll just,
And let's not forget, there is the next issue blurb that we do have to go over. So for next issue, which would be issue number 8, Bizarro is back for the first time. But since this is a Bizarro story, this actually makes sense, kind of. And he's the toast of the town as a performance artist, and no, he doesn't perform Superman. But Superboy gets involved anyway, and wait until you see the results. John Moore returns as the writer. Jim Mooney is still here as the penciler. Arthur Adams fills in as inker.
And Mike Carlin remains the browbeater, as he says. Yeah. I'll look forward to that, because I've been looking forward to the Bizarro issue since we started doing these reviews. Like, that's been my most anticipated. The most anticipated issue is the one where he goes to the future and meets Superman, and you've got Andy in it. That. Yeah. Is it Andy or TJ?
It's TJ.
TJ's
first return to the series since issue 4.
Brilliant. I'm really looking forward to that one, and we're still a little ways off, but we'll get there. The comic reviews aren't our priority on the channel, but I'm sure you could tell just watching this video that we do enjoy doing them. So we're going to get around to it eventually. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to tune in again next week, where I imagine we'll be doing a commentary of something. We haven't decided what it will be yet. We'll just see what we feel like next week. Yep. Thank you all again. Goodbye.